Okay, guys, today we are going to talk about the history of Christianity. And like I've talked about in class, there's a good portion of you guys that know have a pretty good background knowledge of what we're going to be talking about here today. But we'll kind of count this as a review to help you guys get ready for your upcoming quiz over Christianity, as well as getting ready for the end of the unit assessment, in which we are comparing and contrasting the major world religions. So let's go ahead and jump right into it. And as we all, or many of us know, the founder of Christianity was a man by the name of Jesus, and he was uh, originally a member of the Jewish faith, and basically, as a result of that, we start to see a lot of what he believed in terms of his Jewish beliefs and stuff like that, kind of infused into his own beliefs as to how things should be um, worked in terms of the new or in terms of the religion and such, and it eventually evolves into the religion of Christianity. Um, he was born in a city called Judah, which is in the southern part of Palestine, that is current present day Israel. Much of what we know about his life comes from the New Testament, which is the four books in the Bible known as the Gospel. So the Old Testament is the Torah, which is basically the Jewish Bible. And the New Testament obviously talks about the life of Jesus. So you can start to see some connections there between Judaism and Christianity. So there's some things there as well too. Um, Basically, we know very little about his life from after the time he was born until about the age he was 30. We knew that he traveled from town to town speaking to people, um, spreading his word, his message to the people that wanted to come and hear him. Eventually, these people began to start to follow him. They became known as his disciples, and he chose 12 of them that were his main disciples to help him preach, and these men were called the apostles. Okay, so that's where we start to see some people to start to help Jesus preach and spread the word of his word throughout much of the area. Paul, Peter, and some of the other ones that you would see in many of the religious texts would go around and help him teach the um, basics of what he thought was the way to live and such like that. So, with that said, when we talk about this and some of the other things, uh, this is on Zaption, so make sure that you guys are going to answer the question that goes along with it in terms of the next, so I can see if you guys are getting this and understanding what's going on there. If you guys have any additional questions, you guys can ask me as well too. So, when you come to this slide here, take a break here and let you guys answer the question. So, what did he teach about? Well, Jesus taught the people that there was only one God, so makes it a monotheistic religion. And that they should obey the Ten Commandments. Okay, he preached that God loved everyone, wanted people to be kind to one another. He taught that if people had faith in God and followed His will, that those people would eventually go to heaven. His message, all these messages that he began to teach, began to spread throughout what at the time was the Roman Empire. It met with a lot of resistance, and he was arrested for his teachings. Okay, he was found innocent for what they believed was being a traitor to the empire, but he was still crucified as a result of that because of the fact that um, the leaders of the area wanted to appease many of the tribal leaders or the religious leaders of the area in order to make sure that there wasn't any other conflict. So they figured um, by having him executed, it would alleviate some of the problems within that area. And so he was crucified as a result, which we saw in the video clip that we saw in the classroom as to what took place there. So he was definitely, it was one of those things that he was definitely uh, killed for reasons to kind of prevent larger problems from happening for the Romans in that area of the empire. So his message after he died, um, the apostles began to start to spread the word of or his word throughout the region. We start to see that Christianity begins to quickly spread and had many followers in the Roman Empire by 100 AD. So we start to see a lot of people starting to catch on, take part in, and adopt this religion as their religion rather than what we see, or rather than the religions that were in that particular area. So we're coming up on another one of the questions I'm going to ask for indentization. So make sure that you guys are answering it, and we'll go from there. Like I said before, the apostles were responsible for helping to spread Christianity throughout much of the area around the Mediterranean. We also talked about, from the video clip that we saw as well too, that a lot of these ideas that related to religion spread through the trade routes along the Mediterranean Sea, because ideas as well as goods and services also traveled with these traders in these particular areas. So it's very important to know that, as you see these red lines on this map here, that these were definitely trade routes within these areas, and that's how the religion spread. It's much like how Islam spread up and down through the Silk Road, or Hinduism or Buddhism, Judaism, so on and so forth, out into the East. It's the same way here with Christianity, but the Christianity kind of went more west in comparison to where Islam and such moved east. So we start to see that it begins to take hold in Europe. Now, as we saw as well too, there was a lot of pushback to this idea of this Christian religion, lots of persecution. And as I said before, persecution was basically the Christians were being bullied, picked on for their beliefs. And the people of the area were followers of the Roman Empire, which they had a polytheistic religion. They even believed that the emperor was a god. So therefore, it was very much a troubling time as Christianity grew. Christianity had a lot of problems as it was in its infancy and growing into a much larger religion. It wasn't until one of the emperors of the Roman Empire, Constantine, on his deathbed, was actually baptized in the Christian church. And as I said before in my classes, that it was believed that his wife was actually a Christian and did a lot of things in his life to influence him to eventually doing this. But he didn't do this until he was actually physically on his deathbed. He was baptized. And at that point in time, Christianity was starting to be accepted. And we see that it officially becomes the religion of the Roman Empire underneath another emperor by the name of Theodosius, a little bit further down the road. So we start to see that Christianity starts to take hold, had lots of problems in the beginning, and then as it works its way up, it becomes the official religion of the Roman Empire, and we start to see it spread out through these particular areas. So Christianity was definitely spreading from these particular areas at this point in time. Now, Christianity in this day and age, you guys probably have seen a number of different churches, and you probably sit there and wonder to yourself, well, is that a Christian church? Is that a Christian church? Well, Christianity has become a number of different churches throughout its history. And this timeline does a really good job of kind of trying to explain this. Hopefully you guys can see my pointer here. And you can see from this time frame right here is when basically Christianity got its beginnings. And it was just one church in here that believed in Jesus as being the Son of God. And there was just, one church. They were all Christians. Everybody followed the same way. And it wasn't until right around 1054 here on this timeline that we see here that we see the Great Schism take place. And basically what happens here is that there was two halves of the Roman Empire, an east and a west, and they couldn't agree. Basically, they couldn't agree on how the religion should be run, who the leader of the churches should be. And so what happens here is that these groups basically then form two different churches, okay? The Eastern Orthodox Church, which were mainly Greeks, Slavic people, Russian people, so on and so forth, in that area of the world, basically split and kind of formed their version of Christianity. And then we start to see the Roman Catholic Church, which we know a lot about the Roman Catholic Church, and that was the group in the West, Rome, adopted it as its main religion. And we see that there's a split between the empire, and this kind of basically creates a division um, between the two. Okay, so we have the Roman Catholic Church and the Eastern Orthodox Church that result of the Great Schism that took place there. Then a little bit further down the road, and as you can see, it's in line with about the 1517s, maybe a little bit after, a little bit before, we see another split in which we call it the Protestant Reformation. And this is a guy by the name of Martin Luther, who was a priest in the Catholic Church, did not agree with what was going on in the church. Basically, the sales of indulgences and stuff like that to people. Basically, they would pay for their ticket to heaven, is what it basically boiled down to. They would be basically, they would say, I don't know, murder somebody, and then they would pay to have their sins abolished by the priest, which is one of those things that Martin Luther could not see with. And there was a whole slew of other problems with the church at that time, but the biggest one was the sale of indulgences to the people in order to basically buy their ticket to heaven, or at least that's what they believed. And basically, what occurred there was that he then took and nailed what they called the 95 Theses, and this is the 95 problems that he had with the Roman Catholic Church at the time. And basically, he nailed it to a church door. He was excommunicated, which means he was kicked out of the Catholic Church, and he basically decided to form his own religion of the Protestant religion, or I should say of Lutheranism, I should say, that Martin Luther Lutheranism. And we start to see a number of different churches start to splinter off from the Catholic Church as a result of that, because of this Reformation that took place here with Martin Luther. And as a direct result of that, we start to see things like Protestantism, we start to see Presbyterian, you start to see Baptist, so on and so forth. There's so many different Christian versions of churches out there. Like, as you can see here, thousands of denominations. As long as they believed in Jesus, they would be considered to be one of those denominations as well. And then so that we start to see that happened as a result of that. And Martin Luther is a very important person for that particular reason, because of the split there. And we see that there is so many different versions of Christianity out there now. As well. Then we see here with the Anglican Church right here, and basically this one is a kind of an interesting story. And this was Henry VIII wanted a divorce from his wife. The Catholic Church granted him one because basically his wife was not giving him a man or a boy child in order to take over. Or to fill his role as king after he died. So church gives him an annulment. Basically, an annulment in this situation is basically there was no marriage because his wife could not give him a boy child. Marries again, could not have a boy child with this one, asked for another one. Church says no, basically. And as a result of that, Henry says, but guess what? I'm going to start my own church, and then I can do what I want. Now, the King of England becomes the head of the church, and he was able to, I believe, marry and divorce or annul those marriages, I think, 2 or 3 more times in order to have a male child in the family. So I know a lot of you guys have been thinking about this and how these things work, and that's pretty much how we have so many different versions of Christianity, is because of these divisions here, these disagreements within the church, and it's splintered off and created new versions of basically what people believe in terms of the same thing, and that is the splitting of these churches. So once again, we're going to pop up with another question to kind of see how you guys are thinking about this, and then we'll kind of go from there with some other few things to kind of wrap up this lesson, and we'll go from there. So major holidays that you guys really need to focus in on, obviously Christmas, which celebrates the birth of Jesus. We all know about this. It's coming up relatively soon. We'll get into a little bit more details in class about it, but it celebrates the birth of Jesus. And then there's Easter, probably the most important of the holidays because it actually celebrates the resurrection or the believed resurrection of Jesus and really kind of seals the deal as him being the belief that he is the Son of God, and that he has come again, so on and so forth. The Easter celebrates the resurrection, Christmas celebrates the birth of Jesus. All these major holidays center around the life and death and rebirth of Jesus as a whole. Some of the other things that you need to know, like I talked about in class, the Bible is the holy text. A church is a Christian house of worship. And then, of course, the cross is the symbol of Christianity, which you guys should all have in your notes by now. If you guys don't, and I would know these for your quiz as well, too, as well as the holidays. Big time stuff for you guys to know and understand. And be prepared for that Check for Understanding quiz that's coming up here in the near future. If you guys have any questions, feel free to email me or ask me in class, and we'll kind of go from there. All right. Thank you very much, and we will talk again soon.